afternoon, MSU community. My name is Dr. Wanda Lipscomb. I am the Senior Associate Dean for Diversity and Inclusion and Associate Dean for Student Affairs in the College of Human Medicine.
And I am Luis Garcia. I'm the Director of Migrant Student Services.
Mr. Garcia and I are the co-chairs of the MSU's Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Steering Committee. We were charged by President Stanley to conduct a comprehensive planning process focused on MSU's commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. Together with our committee members, we have been working to identify barriers to a fuller realization of these values at MSU and to develop a DEI planning framework. The framework is intended to lay the groundwork for long-term system-wide change and will be shared later this semester. During the course of our work to create this long-term plan, the pandemic and several campus and national events have shed light on systemic racism. President Stanley requested that we, with the input of the Office of Inclusion and Intercultural Initiatives, create a task force on racial equity. A group of committed faculty, staff, and students with focused expertise in diversity, equity, and inclusion were identified to serve on the task force. The task force was charged to consider and identify a set of immediate actions centered around campus climate and safety, policing, and faculty staff diversity. A little over a week ago, President Stanley shared the recommendations from the task force with the campus community and provided an opportunity for you to share your questions that we will address later in this webcast. Today, you will hear from MSU President, Dr. Samuel Stanley, our new Vice President and Chief Diversity Officer, Dr. Jabbar Bennett, and Dr. Quentin, who has chaired the Diversity and Faculty Staff Subcommittee for the task force. They will walk through the recommendations and respond to your pre-submitted questions. With that, we welcome President Stanley, Dr. Bennett, and Dr. Tyler to offer their insights and recommendations. President Stanley, we will begin with you.
Well, thank you, Dr. Lipscomb, and thank you, Mr. Garcia, and the entire DEI Steering Committee for the many months of work you have devoted to this critical effort. I think certainly a university that talks about the importance of diversity, equity, and inclusion should have a faculty and staff that is representative of the community it serves. In particular, it's vital that we have a diverse faculty and staff to best support the success of all students, as well as contribute to the overall diversity and well-being of our employees. Such diversity is also important to the quality of our research and our outreach beyond our campus. I want to thank Dr. Quentin Tyler for leading the Task Force Working Group on Faculty and Staff Diversity, a subject that is so important to the excellence of this university. I think their recommendations show us a number of ways we might establish or expand programs or policies to support that diversity. Before we get into our discussion, I'd like to ask our Vice President and Chief Diversity Officer, Dr. Jabbar Bennett, to offer some thoughts. He will be active in ensuring the university and its colleges and units work effectively to attract and support diverse faculty and staff. Welcome, Dr. Bennett.
Thank you, President Stanley. And I look forward to working with you and others to ensure that MSU does its best to recruit, retain, and support the most diverse and exemplary staff and faculty possible. I'm so happy to be here at MSU during such a crucial time in our history and that of the nation. As our population becomes more diverse, so must our staff and faculty who advise, instruct, and mentor these emerging leaders. Staff and faculty make significant contributions to the operations and classroom instruction that occur on our campus and virtually every day. These employees come from different places, possess various identities, and expect to feel welcome and be empowered to do their best work. It is our responsibility to help ensure their success while acknowledging the various historical, traditional, cultural, societal, and at times personal challenges they may face. Over the past several weeks, I've had the opportunity to meet numerous staff and faculty. Some have been here for 2, 3, or 4 years, while others have spent the last 2, 3, or 4 decades making significant contributions to our community. All of these employees are Spartans, and they deserve to be treated the same with admiration, civility, and mutual respect. This working group has clearly outlined several immediate and longer-term actions that we can move forward together. And now is the time to be intentional about this work. I am very appreciative of the breadth and depth of the group's recommendations and look forward to leading these efforts and collaborating with you, Spartan Nation. So thank you. And Dr. Lipscomb, back to you.
Thank you, President Stanley and Dr. Bennett, for your kind words. I now welcome Dr. Quentin Tyler for a presentation of the recommendations from his subcommittee. Dr. Tyler.
Thank you, Dr. Lipscomb, President Stanley, and Dr. Bennett. Our subcommittee took an approach of innovation, but also one of replicating best practices across the country and in colleges at MSU. In particular, we focused on university-wide recommendations, recommendations that are faculty and staff specific, and recommendations that focus on data. To highlight a few of our recommendations, we recommend be intentional in partnerships with institutions that focus on diverse faculty and staff, in particular Hispanic serving institutions, historically Black colleges and universities, tribal colleges, community colleges, and other land-grant institutions. We recommend creating funding opportunities for departments, units, and colleges for cluster hirings. We recommend uniform checks and balances in the recruitment, interviewing, and selecting of faculty and staff. We recommend creating programs to develop our own talent. We also recommend scaling up future faculty programs and postdoc programs that are already happening at MSU. And last, but certainly not least, we recommend rewarding, highlighting, and incentivizing those that create a climate of equity and inclusion for our faculty and staff to be successful.
Thank you, Dr. Tyler. I will now share a few of the questions that were collected from the feedback that we received from faculty, staff, and students in response to this subcommittee report. This is meant to be a dialogue, so President Stanley and Dr. Bennett, please feel free to add your perspectives. How would the university seek to promote diversity from different workshops and events that connect the community and the university together?
Well, first, Dr. Lipscomb, I think it starts in the planning of our workshop and events by first integrating our committees with community representation, and also recommending MSU faculty and staff and students serving on committees throughout the community. In particular, in East Lansing, there's a Human Relations Commission. There's also a newly elected DEI officer that's hired. In addition to that, I think there's an opportunity to engage in terms of outreach and engagement offices, as well as MSU Extension, which is represented in all counties and within the state of Michigan.
In your recommendations, you mentioned creating an annual pool of money that rewards the colleges, departments, and units that explicitly advance DEI. Why would this be beneficial and not end up advancing initiatives just for the sake of monetary reward instead of accomplishing what should be ordinary practice?
Well, Dr. Lipscomb, we look at rewarding DEI the same way as we reward anything else that we do in terms of teaching, research, and extension. In the ideal world, we want to get the point across where it truly is part of what everyone does, but we're not just at that point yet. More of an encouragement, more of highlighting and rewarding those that go above and beyond.
And I'd like to add something to that if I can, to say that we can also be thoughtful around the ways that we do provide support, for example, in the form of matching funds, where units could put some investment into these activities as well, and again, prioritize these activities and the recruitment of diverse individuals, as it will help enrich the teaching that happens, the learning as well, and the overall environment.
So this is Sam. I think it's a great idea to really take a look at this as a potential tool. We know that a number of the things we've done so far haven't been completely successful. So I think any way in which we can kind of break the norm and start to think about new ways to do things, I think is important. And I think it's about saying that efforts in diversity, equity, inclusion matter to the institution. There's very few more powerful sources of saying something matters than putting monetary value on it. So the further investment basically from the institution in these efforts. And that's really, I think, what we're talking about in terms of the incentives. So I think this can be done. As Dr. Bennett said, I think if we look at it carefully, I think it can be done. And I think I agree certainly with Dr. Tyler and the committee's request that we consider this.
In some of MSU's colleges, student teaching evaluations are important instruments used to evaluate faculty teaching. A stream of academic research finds racial, ethnic, and gender bias in student teaching evaluations. What steps should or can MSU make to ensure faculty members' contributions to MSU's teaching mission are evaluated in an unbiased manner?
First, I think that it's important to understand and recognize that teaching is important throughout MSU. In addition to that, we have to continue to educate ourselves on what bias actually is, and then also provide examples, allow faculty members to provide examples in which they participate in inclusive teaching practice.
We also have to ensure that the people who are considering evaluations as part of a faculty member's review understand that bias does exist. So these tools, these evaluations should be informative, but not wholly declarative around the student's experience or their perception of it. So I think it is a tool that should be considered with again, understanding the potential of bias that may show up, especially as it relates to diverse instructors in the classroom.
I couldn't agree more. And I think it really does, again, emphasize something we've talked about before, the need to improve awareness of this issue among students, faculty, department, and college leaders. And I think that's why, of course, we started the Foundations course, which contains a component of anti-bias and e-learning. And I think these and other programs are going to be essential because we really have to do work on culture on campus so people can understand where these hidden biases are and how they lead to systemic racism across our structure. So I think, again, education remains a critical component of this. I do think course evaluations are valuable, but again, they have to be recognized within the context they're taking place and the structure that's around.
Thank you. You mentioned including DEI efforts in annual performance reviews. How do you plan to keep the performance management process equitable as not to leave it up to the manager's interpretation?
Dr. Lipscomb, I think first we have to continue to educate our managers. We got to provide learning and development for those folks. Also, we have to utilize the expertise of those in DEI roles in the respective units and colleges across MSU to provide a checkpoint for those managers.
And Dr. Tyler calls it a checkpoint, and I'll call it accountability. I think it's important as we think about this work and as we shift the culture, as you heard President Stanley mention, it will take time. It takes education as well. And along the way, there should be places where we can check in with our faculty and with those leaders who we are holding accountable themselves to do their part to help move this work forward.
I think one of the challenges we and others face, and I think it's going to be an important part of the work the DEI steering committee is doing, is recognizing what the appropriate metrics are. What should we be evaluating performance based on? And I think developing those kinds of metrics and reaching some agreement, at least for things that are common across the university, will allow supervisors maybe to assess people on a more level way and to really look at employee performance and key measures. I think, for me, it's part of my annual evaluation and the senior leaders reporting to me. We talk about DEI. I actually run through representation within their units to understand. I take a look at new hires that have been done to understand what's being done to promote diversity, equity, and inclusion in the different units. And I think finding ways in which we do something similar, again, appropriate legal, I think is an important step that we need to take.
Well, thank you. This has been a really great dialogue. I look forward to the continued work that we will do in the implementation of the DEI plan. President Stanley, do you have any closing comments?
Well, again, I first want to give my thanks to Dr. Tyler and the hard work of the task force. And I think if you take a look at what we've talked about today and you bring it back into the context of our climate on campus, the campus climate discussion we've had, these two things are interconnected. We're not going to have the appropriate culture climate on campus if we're not a diverse and inclusive campus. At the same time, it becomes difficult to become a diverse and inclusive campus if we don't have the right people who can mentor and really help educate others about these critical issues. So we really need to create a virtuous circle where we're growing both. And I think that's the key to our performance going forward. So all of the things we've talked about so far, I think all play a critical role in making this the kind of campus we want MSU to be in the future.
Thank you. Mr. Garcia, please close us out.
I want to say thank you to Dr. Quentin Tyler, President Stanley, Dr. Bennett, and everyone who is joining us virtually. If you would like to further review the recommendations from the DEI Task Force on Racial Equity, the response from the President Stanley, and other series, please visit the President's Initiatives webpage. This concludes the webcast for today, and we want to remind you to stay safe, and we hope to see you in person when we return to campus. Have a good day. Thank you.